If you enjoy my podcast, then please subscribe, give it a rating, and share it with other musicians. I also host another podcast, the Mike Del Ferro podcast, with travel stories, interviews with wonderful people, and more. You will find it on Spotify and all other podcast platforms or via my website, mikedelferro.com.
Could you tell me a bit of your meeting with Toots and the beginning of your collaboration? If you can tell me what year and the moment and the circumstances in which you started to collaborate with him, were the someone being you know the 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 point of contact or something like that?
Yeah, so I was always a huge fan of his music. I always admired him. And at some point, well, there were two situations, two kind of circumstances which coincidentally became the right timing somehow. First, I sent him a tape with recordings. And I said, "Dear Mr. Tielemans, I would love to have you play on my recordings and all of that." And I sent this to Dirk and Veerle. Dirk Gods, who unfortunately passed away. He was also they were both managing Toots at that time. And then I got a really nice reply that he liked it. And the other thing was that I had a quartet at that time with Frank Waganet, the founder of the Brussels Jazz Orchestra. I was also actually the first pianist of the Brussels Jazz Orchestra in the 90s. And I was teaching in Ghent at the time. So I was a lot in Belgium. And so also through playing with Frank a lot in Belgium, I also I saw Derek, we played at the same festival. So I kind of got on his radar screen. And then he said, "Yeah, I like your arrangements." This was one of my first albums called Make Someone Happy. And he came and he recorded 2 tracks. It was incredibly nice. He gave me a huge discount. I had no money to pay for this, but they were very cool. And then there was a situation that in Terneuzen, this festival, not so far from Brussels, in the south of Holland, the Netherlands, there was a festival. It still exists. It's the Zeeland Jazz Festival. And they gave me a kind of a carte blanche. They said to me, "Mike, who would you like to invite as a guest to play with you?" And I thought by myself, well, I knew that Toots lives close to Brussels. It's like a 1-hour drive. Why not try? And I called the management and they said, "Yeah, he's available." And then he came. And that was this, and he played a couple of songs. And from that moment on, he started calling me because in the you can record on someone's album, but of course, when you play live, then and the stage and audience, that's a whole different thing actually. And from that moment on, he started calling me for concerts in Belgium, in Europe. And then eventually we ended up playing in Japan, Korea, Taiwan, a lot in Asia, Curacao, the Dutch Antilles. So yeah. And then over a period of around 10 years, I played a lot with him. And I realized when he passed away that I did at least like between 175 and 200 concerts with him all over the world. So that's quite a lot, actually, if you really think about it. And I'm still grateful every day for this amazing opportunity.
Wow. And another question is, let's say, both for of course, the jazz musician, but also for the Dutch citizen, because Toots was really a popular musician, a popular figure in the Netherlands. And could you tell me a bit more what it could represent, at that time? So I assume it's the late 1990s, something like that, if I'm correct. To start to play with such a big musician, you know, because it was popular among the audience in the Netherlands, but also among the musicians, right? It was a big figure.
Yes, yes, he had both. And here in the Netherlands, um, one of his big breakthroughs was the music of Turks Fruit, the iconic movie here, Turkish Fruit, if you would say Turkish Delight. Actually, that would be the the probably the correct translation. And that movie became a huge hit here. And then later there was another like a kind of a police series called Bancher, and he played the soundtrack, and that also made him really popular among a huge audience here. Because it's true that you know he was a musician, only like because his music was so evolved, so prolific, with credible harmony, melody. So he served kind of everyone, but people who were a little bit less educated about music also loved him because of his personality and, of course, that beautiful sound, which reaches, well, actually, a worldwide audience. So he had both, and I think that was the reason I think that he was so successful. And
Mm,
yeah, and for a musician, I was young. It was an incredible opportunity. And for me, what I really learned, for instance, was that um, trying, I mean, I want to stay modest, but, if you have the chance to play with such an amazing artist, I realized that accompanying someone, trying to make someone sound better, is as valuable as playing a great solo yourself. And he kind of liked the way I accompanied him. He also asked me to use a keyboard to play the string sounds. He loved the strings, string pads and stuff, and
mm,
which was also great for myself because I learned to still, now when I play in trio or whatever, I play both keyboards, piano and keyboard at the same time, and uh, so musically, his vision on music, his knowledge about harmony. Of course, he was a great guitarist. I mean, he was a musical genius. And also, what I want to mention, what I'm very grateful for, is he was a pioneer. And when do you get a chance? It's probably, in my case, a once in a lifetime opportunity to collaborate with a pioneer. I mean, and so I just incredibly grateful for all of this. And I hope I answered your question, actually.
no, 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 no.
Yeah.
That's it's very nice, and once again, that confirms something I not discovered, but I realized that how important the Netherlands were for as a country, was for his career as a musical environment, because you know we all know his story. He started in Brussels, then he went into the United States, then he had this period with intense period with George Shearing, but then in the early 1960s he kind of reconnected with Europe, because frankly speaking, his time with George Shearing uh, allowed him only a handful of time to come back and visit the family in Europe. But so in the 1960s, he kind of reconnected personally and most of all professionally with Europe, and the Netherlands were among the most important country in providing job opportunity, and then later in the 70s, recording with the people you mentioned, so Rogier van Otterlo, but also all the circle of musicians, the brothers Jacobs, Louis van Dijk, and all those people. And he was lucky enough to participate in those productions that were widely I was to say consumed. That's not the word, but widely known by the also by the common people, the non-jazz lovers, and that's marvelous. That kind of a,
Yeah, exactly. He reached a huge audience, not only like musical intellectuals, but the greater audience. And it was the right time, the right era for this, and until today. I mean, the younger generation, of course, doesn't really know him. Although I'm still surprised how many people know him, young people. But of course, the older generations, yeah, he's like just iconic, actually.
Yeah, yeah. About it, the curiosity. Maybe you have, activity as a teacher, educator, so you're connected with younger players. Yeah. One of my question was, do they still know? Do they still have interest in Toots Thielemans?
On Monday, September 23rd, I will give a webinar about self-management and networking for musicians from 8 until 9:30 p.m. Amsterdam Central European Time. For more information, email to clinics@mikedelferro.com. You know, with the young generation, I don't want to sound too old and too patronizing, but the general problem is that, and it's not their fault. They're a YouTube generation, so and they're the shuffle generation. So everything is so scattered when it comes to musical knowledge. I mean, I don't have a free like a regular teaching assignment because I'm too much traveling, too much, touring a lot. But I do give a lot of master classes, and you know, when I ask a student, like, or anyone actually, when is the last time that you watched a YouTube video from the beginning to the end without scrolling? We all do this. Me too. I'm not a saint. So it just shows how scattered things are. It's all fragments, and I made a rule for myself. For instance, when I'm at home, I don't stream anymore. I only play CDs. Why? Because it's more, you're more focused, but also the whole process of creating an album from A to Z with a repertoire, a program, an order, and now everybody has like bits and pieces of music. So I teach like a young pianist, and he goes like, "Yeah." I said, "Who do you listen to?" He said, "Well, Robert Glasper, and Robert Glasper is an incredible pianist. Nothing wrong with Robert Glasper, but they don't realize like where is Robert Glasper got his knowledge from? Because Robert Glasper, you hear that he studied or at least knows Bud Powell, Art Tatum, Peterson, and and a lot of younger people don't have somehow the way of thinking, the mindset to think a little bit in older generations. Where does the music really come from? So what I always try to do, and then I also, of course, use Toots as an example because of his incredible way of phrasing melodies, just Toots as being an amazing musician. Sometimes I really have to point that out. I mean, harmonica players, like, they all know, of course. I mean, actually, the challenge for a lot of young harmonica players is, how do I bypass Toots? How do I find my own voice? That's also the question I ask when I interview harmonica players myself, But so it's little bit more like a general thing to make younger musicians aware of where it really came from. I mean, the jazz history has been around now for a century, so it's good. Yeah, so it's more like also a general answer topic somehow, and even maybe a problem.
Yeah, that's nice that you mentioned this. And speaking of generation, one thing that I notice is that at the end of his career, of course, Toots always played with younger player, but like player who had always a greater age difference with him. And I was wondering, do you have any thought? Do you have any idea, opinion on what was he looking, in collaborating with, younger players? Because, some players, as they age, they kind of get stuck, in their own generation with people maybe they started to play with. And on the other hand, Toots belongs to those, aging players who tried, and I think he deliberately tried to be surrounded by younger players. Then my question would be, what was he like, looking for in these younger players? Was it like a kind of energy, or, musician that would propose a kind of input, in order to make him sound more fresh, or new musical ideas or other influences? Because I think he had a curiosity for, any contemporary music. Is that right?
Well, it's first of all a great observation and a great point you're bringing up here. And also, somehow the question is the answer because he was always eager to learn in many ways. I can give a couple examples, practical examples. Like he once called me before we went on tour and he said, I've heard about a band, a Brazilian group in the Netherlands called Zuko 103, which at that time was really hot. You know, all young musicians. I would love to listen to that group. So I called them. I know them very well, the musicians. And of course, they were honored. The next day, I had a CD in the mail, which I brought on this tour, and then he would really listen. So Dirk, the manager, he still had like the old, you know, the CD player, the wall, you know, and then every time when we were traveling, Derek had like a bag full of CDs of all young, starting musicians. He also wrote a lot of liner notes. And what amazed me all the time, he really took the time and listened. He was sometimes enthusiastic. He was honest. You know, he criticized, but he was always eager to for new sounds. And but also like at that time, it was also that the tablets, like the organizers. You know, now it's all smartphones, but you had like a Palm and a Cyan and all these, you know, now vintage organizers. And he bought one, you know, and for an older generation, digital stuff can be a challenge. But he
Mhm.
thought until he understood, so he was always open, listening to younger people, and also realizing that if he wanted to keep evolving, it's to always have fresh young people around him with new knowledge. So, to be honest, I do the same. You know, I'm not as old as Toots, not at all.
Not
but
yet.
but I but yeah, yes, yeah. I'll get there hopefully. But I do uh, play a lot with younger people, and I learned so much about. It can be an app, just music I've never heard about, also realizing I actually know nothing after playing in 100 countries or more. But and it keeps you fresh. There is a drummer here, John Engels. I don't know if you know him. And John
Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
how
John
did
is
he
like
start?
yeah. He's 90.
Oh,
You know, he's like in the Toots era. And John is amazing. He's just still going strong. You know, playing great. And he also surrounds himself by young people because it also keeps him young, you know. So but it's a nice observation, actually, very
yeah.
nice. Yeah.
And one another question on top of this would be, well, there is a kind of generation gap, but sometimes, between musicians, it also involves a kind of stylistic gap, younger people playing kind of more advanced music. And my question would be, on on playing with it, was it always about, remaining on, his field, his music is mainstream jazz, if you want to call it that way? Or did you and other sidemen manage to having him, go out of his comfort zone? You're challenging him with, uh, younger music, if I may say.
when he was a little bit older, um, he unfortunately had some, I mean, he was in his 80s. So, of course, you know, to play extremely fast or extremely complicated was a little bit hard for him. But if you hear recordings where he was young, he was like, it was like flying. It was incredible, and then everybody had to keep up with him. So, and also when there was a sort of kind of expectance of a kind of audience, you cannot go too far sometimes. But he would also, but musically, when you play with great people, spontaneously a lot of stuff happens on stage, and I could see like from his body language, it excited him, and so yeah, a lot of creative stuff happened on the spot, and also personally, I had this, I still have this project called Opera Meets Jazz, where I took these famous opera arias. And once he heard it and he called me, he always wanted to play a couple of those songs because he just loved the repertory and the project, but also it shows like, being open-minded. And when other people bring in suggestions, he would always consider it. So, yeah, he was quite open and yeah, it's actually a little bit like an extension of the previous question, like um wanting to stay fresh and keep practicing. He also was also nice, like um I know, and that I got two stories here which are actually quite interesting, I think, to share in this context. First of all, he practiced every day. I know that Huguette would bring him breakfast when he was still laying in bed, and there was also the harmonica on the there on the plate. So and like what he would do, he would call people, and then you saw already on the phone like Toots. So you call, and the phone rings. You go, "Hey, Toots," and he said to me, "Mike, practice Stella by Starlight in B, like a half a tone higher than the original."
Mm.
And before I could kind of answer him, he already hang up. Phone call was gone. Sometimes he would call How's the Family, but he had these moments. Practice Stella in B and then hang up the phone. Isn't that great? So, of course, I went to the piano when the next time I practiced, and I started, I listened to him, and a whole new world opened for me. Like, wow, this is such a great exercise and new things. And also, what once happened was that we played in a huge concert hall in Spain, and he played Autumn Leaves. He was a little bit tired. It wasn't his best day, I mean, we're all human beings. And in the melody, he kind of lost. He had a little blackout. He missed a couple of notes in the melody, and of course, with such a famous song, he felt terrible about it, And he was even apologizing in the break in the dressing room. And I said, "Toots, first of all, you're Toots. Second of all, I don't think the audience really noticed it. It's so subjective." And yeah, but so many people come out to hear me and blah blah blah. And well, okay. So he was really upset about this thing. And then what was really incredible, like at 1 a.m. in the morning, sometimes you have these hotel rooms and they have all these suites with only like a door in between, which is locked, you know. So I heard him, and I was in the room next to him, and I heard him practicing at 1 a.m. in the morning. We had to get up early for the next flight. And I went like these moves with the detective with the glass, against the wall, and then he was studying Autumn Leaves. He was in his 80s, and he was so upset about the fact that he forgot or he later made a little mistake. Who cares? That was his spirit. So until the very end, he kept developing, and it's amazing. I learned a lot from him, not only on stage but also off stage, in terms of mentality. It's amazing, amazing. I learned so much. Got more stories about mentality, and I can talk about it for hours, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you mentioned the concert you were doing with the quartet. It was, well, regularly, like, at least in Europe, kind of mixing people where there were like some steady association, but you would often change, the bass player, the player, of course, also on the basis of everyone's availability. And my question was, could you tell me a bit more about like the logistic of the quartet? So usually the performances, the concert, did you see and meet just for rehearsal, or was everything done on the spot of a few hours before? Did you receive, lead sheets in advance?
We were, well, it's a combination of things. Sometimes um, I went to Brussels, to La Hulpe, where he lived,
Yeah.
Ter Hulpen, a couple of times to rehearse, especially before we went to Japan. He wanted to try some new things. Sometimes we met a little bit earlier at the concert because he requested a rehearsal. Then, that communication all went through the management.
Mm.
Sounds very formal, but it was just a great team and wonderful people. And he always wanted to also, like a nice thing on the side. He always wanted to have dinner with the whole crew. He only separated himself when he was tired and needed a nap. But other than that, the whole feeling of the crew. So it was a great collaboration. He created great atmospheres for everyone. And then, but sometimes, yeah, uh, and we all, well, it was before the iPad, but we all still like kind of had the book with all the songs. Sometimes he would repeat a little bit more. Sometimes all of a sudden he would throw in a new piece, but also sometimes, and that's really like the old American jazz musician's way, because of course, after all, he was a jazz musician in America for a zillion years. He would just start playing a song and you had to figure out, the chords. Never something crazy and undoable, but he had those moments too. So, but
Yeah.
when he a little older, I must say the repertory pretty much stayed little the same because, because of age,
Yeah.
more security. Yeah. So, yeah. So, yeah. But it was always interesting. And what amazed me the most, actually, even like 99% of the concerts I played with him, he would open up with "In Your Own Sweet Way" by Dave Brubeck.
Mm.
And so the arrangement was more or less the same, but every time he started improvising, it was a whole new world. Also with the ballads, we did a lot. "I Do It For Your Love" by Paul Simon, which is also on the iconic Bill Evans recording, "Affinity." And what amazed me, even repeating the melodies, the arrangements, that the solos, the improvising, the creation was always different and fresh, like an unlimited source of ideas. Really incredible.
Yeah. No, that's true that if you listen, look at, footed and recorded performance of maybe the last 5 years, you have a steady repertoire and, a kind of pattern with, in your own sweet way as an opener, and then,
Yeah.
there's the slow number and up tempo. Well, not really up tempo, but there is a pattern. And I've also heard that it was like a kind of, well, he was a great musician, but he was also a great entertainer, and he could like really feel what the audience was expecting, to the point of just improvising the set list, because he had this kind of well, a kind of sixth natural sense to, just to feel what the audience was in need of to go further in the concert. Is that something you experience also?
Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh yes. You know, his main he had actually two objectives. First of all, great music. And second of all, he would never leave the stage without a standing ovation. And I can give you a couple examples here. Once we played at the summer festival in France on the summer night, and for some reason, like a cold spell kicked in, a storm and rain, and it was outdoor concert in the summer. And it was so cold that people were like sitting against each other to heat up, And then, of course, that that's a difficult situation to create let's say a warm atmosphere. And then he kept on playing, entertaining the audience, explaining about the music or nice stories on the side until he got that standing ovation. He would never leave the stage without. It was also kind of a survival fighting mentality, but in a good sense, not in a negative sense. Maybe it's the wrong word, fighting. But he would never leave the stage without a happy audience. Another thing which once happened was also a great lesson for me with audience. Like we played in Japan in the Blue Notes, and well, that's actually an Asian thing. People in Asia, they're totally fond of autographs and photo sessions. So there was this huge queue after a concert. Sometimes the autograph session took longer than the concert itself. So he was sitting there, Dirk Veerle would put a chair and CDs, and he would be very patiently signing pictures, all of that. And I knew I was on the side, sometimes the musicians would sign as well, but of course it was all around Toots, of course. And then I knew we had a lobby call like at 4 a.m. to go to the next destination. And I said to him in Dutch, in Flemish Dutch, I said, Toots, there's still this huge queue here and we have to get up so early. Shouldn't you wrap up, And then he looked at me and he said, Mike, you have to appreciate each and every person who comes out to listen to you and treat them, like embrace your fans no matter what. And he just was there until the very end, 1 hour later, finishing all those autographs and photos. And that was a big lesson for me. And nowadays, in my own career, it still sticks with me. Like every person who comes out there, you have to appreciate, especially now in these difficult times with so much competition from internet, YouTube, option paralysis. People have so many things they can choose from. But of course, he didn't have that problem of audience not showing up. But the way he appreciated every person, and he didn't have to do it for the money or for the fame. It was just a genuine mentality he had from respect. And that was that's like what I said before, like a great thing I learned from him off stage.
Beside any musical question, was he also an inspiring figure, human wise and professional wise?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, the age, the kind of life he led, well, he was a genius. So that comes with a certain intelligence. So yeah, wisdom about life experience. So, and if you're sitting next to someone for 3 weeks in Japan, in the bus or in the train or whatever, in the plane, yeah, a lot of interesting stuff comes out, or stories about Charlie Parker. I mean, you're sitting with someone who still play with Charlie Parker. You go like, this is just like totally amazing. So, yeah, he taught me well, not only me, us, musicians, younger people, a lot about life. And yeah, and because he really loved to be with the guy, so to speak. He loved to tour and dinners and talking in the bus. I mean, like I said, occasionally, especially when he was really got older, he would take a couple of naps. But that also amazed me. It's not like he was gone for half an hour, and he just would like put his head a little bit on his chest, and then he slept like for 5 minutes during a break or in a bus, and then he was all up and running again. So he needed these short power naps, and then he could function again for a couple of hours and always deliver. Yeah, really amazing. I wish I had that. When I take a nap now, I need a half an hour to be to put 2 days in one day. Yeah?
Yeah, no, that's definitely what amazes me. All those great gaps you find in his figure because he was a genius, but at the same time, as you mentioned, he was like he has been hard working, practicing daily all his life. I mean, you said he would always look for a standing ovation, but I also heard many people saying, but he was also saying, never believe in a standing ovation because you can never take anything for granted, and the day after the concert, it starts all over again, and you have to not exactly redo, everything from scratches, but well, in a musical career, nothing is ever really acquired for forever.
No, 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 no. But the um, I hear you, but on a, I think it had to do with the survival mentality. Because after all, he at a very young age went to America. He went to New York, paying dues, as they say. The hard thing. Playing shitty gigs. For nobody knew him.
Mm.
So, which is still a thing in especially in America. Well, it's a thing with jazz, but especially in that era. And he started in exactly the same way. And you know, once you have that survival mentality, I think that kind of stays with you for, well, in his case, all of his life. I mean, I travel so much. Like it's also my experience when I play like a lot in Brazil. Well, I just returned from Brazil. I'm there a couple of times a year. Brazil is great, but it's also a harsh country. It's not only samba and partying. It's not like that. The reality there is harsh. The poverty, the crime, all of that. And the musicians there are so resilient because they really struggle to make a living and all of that, and it makes them strong. And then every gig they play, it's like almost if someone would point a gun at them at their head. Because if you don't play the gig or you don't play well, they will call another one. So in one way it's true, but on the other hand, it comes from a deep survival mentality, which he had.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And well, maybe that's kind of a problem we have, you know, the image of Toots we have no idea because, well, most of us, your generation, my generation, we know the like the brightest decades of his career, the end, but
Yeah,
it is often forgotten that he went through, context, situation, years of, yes, survival, as you name it. And when he arrived in New York City, that was really his dream, he could have stayed in Europe because he already acquired a popularity in different European country as early as in 1950, was popular in Belgium, in Italy, in Sweden.
yeah,
But he decided to go because it was his dream, and he had to restart all over again from scratches. And it was, well, he was lucky enough to benefit from opportunities. But on the other hand, he was also smart enough to make the good choice and sometimes also compromises and to make the most of any opportunity. So
yeah,
yeah, his successful story is a mix of good opportunity and luck, but also of really being smart, being good, being always on top, practice hard. And I suppose that's what makes him a very inspiring figure, for younger
yeah,
musicians.
yeah. He always took the music deadly serious, and it was always, at the end of the day, was always his first priority. The music and so when he had to go, whether it's calling younger musicians to be inspired or move to another place to get musical inspiration, whatever, he was at the end of the day, music was the main priority to take it to the highest level. But he also he wants like about survival, and on this. I think it's a nice thing to share. He once told me that when he went to New York, he played. He had like a steady gig for kind of an Italian mafia boss kind of thing, and the guy's name was Joe the Thumb. Do you know this story?
No,
No,
well, no, no.
no, no. And so there was like a joint, with people, gambling, smoking, prostitutes, and he was playing the guitar mainly, and then Joe the Thumb, the mafia guy, he said, hey, you with the guitar, you play only this song, Mala Femina, Italian song.
Yeah.
And he
That
had
was
to see, and he had to repeat it all night, just playing that one song. And then the gig ended when Joe the Thumb got killed. You see, so I mean, that's not the Toots Thielemans we know, on soundtracks and concert halls. You know, he he paid. Yeah, he came from there too. He went through that.
yeah.
You know, so it's quite yeah, it's amazing lifespan and career.
No, yeah. Unfortunately, but
Impressive.
he only spoke very little about it. But he also, yeah, he saw all the the negative, the trash side of New York City at that time, and
Yeah,
also
and
in the jazz milieu. So yeah, violence, drugs, it
oh
was
yeah,
enough to keep himself away from that because he was only interested in music, develop his career as musicianship. But those were contexts where one could like easily fall, in those kind of troubles.
yeah.
And
Yeah. But he was also smart because Veerle told me that he had um then he would have like a radio gig or recordings of him would be broadcasted, and then meticulously he would keep track of everything which was broadcasted on radio and television or whatever, mainly radio, and then he would send that to the ASCAP, which is the
Mm,
Sabam in Belgium and the Buma
yeah,
Stemmen here, the copyright.
yeah,
So
yeah,
he
yeah.
could get money. So he was also smart and very organized. Fearless told me she still has those records that he would, write down like, okay, then this was broadcasted and, you know, partly survival, but also because most musicians don't do this. They go, okay, these couple of okay, it is true, it's hard, especially now with the streaming world. It is hard to make money of music being broadcasted or streamed. But he used to do that, and it became a part of his big part of his income actually. So he was also smart, and uh, but partly also because he realized, okay, uh, you know, uh, you cannot play $25 gigs and survive from that.
Yeah. I mean, on top of being a gifted musician and everything, he was also, gifted with business. He was a great
Yeah.
businessman, and
Yes.
also, it was. I would add, he was also. He had a kind of social intelligence. He knew which people to connect with and or not. And also, it was, I think, very gifted, with media, to appear on radio, on television. It was because not every musician goes well, speaking on television and radio, but he had a kind of yeah, he had a public persona, that was really appealing as his music.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you are what you play, and you play what you are in most of the case. Like 99 time, when I hear a musician, I kind of can tell from the music um, how the personality is from he or she. It's only in rare cases that people create beautiful music and are uh, not always the nicest people. But but he had this nice personality. Everybody loved him.
Mm.
He's kind and especially also here in the Netherlands, with his accent, being Flemish and the
Um,
way, but also his English. I mean, he was, of course, he naturalized to American, and he was true. He was very well spoken or at least nice spoken, you know. And yeah, he knew what the people wanted to hear, both musically and in terms of speech.
Thank you. That was a very nice conversation.
If you enjoy my podcast, then please subscribe, give it a rating, and share it with other musicians. I also host another podcast, the Mike Del Ferro podcast, with travel stories, interviews with wonderful people, and more. You will find it on Spotify and all other podcast platforms or via my website, mikedelferro.com.